Now, here's something that myself and parent peer workers at Plumtree and Reframing Disability have learnt, and that is therapy is only part of building a good life for our children and family. So what else can families do? To discuss this, our panel today includes Clare Gibellini, peer-to-peer networks lead at Valued Lives, Marlena, Katene, an entertainment journalist, Sam Paior, again, thank you, founder and director of The Growing Space, and Maryam Roghani, Plumtree behavioural specialist / analyst. And Deb Herbert, of course, peer worker at Plumtree and Reframing Disability, who will host the panel. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Now, Mela didn't say that we have got 4 different areas represented. I'm surprised we made it on the panel because one is from Queensland, one is from WA, one is from South Australia, and 2 of us in Sydney. I'm surprised we've even made it on. So well done us. So this discussion, for those who are watching now and watching at home later, is about building foundations for your child's future. So a big welcome to our panelists, who are all exceptional in their own right. And so let's get into it, because more details are on the web and this will be posted later. So Clare and Sam, firstly, I'd like to ask you two about building a strong foundation for their child's future. We talk a lot about having a vision and how this is an important start. When your children were young, what was your vision for them? And what were some of the steps you took to achieving it? So Sam, why don't we start to you and then we'll throw to Clare.
I'm probably not the best person to start with. You might not like my answer here, but that's okay.
All right, stop.
No, I'll do it. I'm going to say that my vision for my kids was really just, I think when you're pregnant, you imagine that whatever's going to come out of you is going to have the best of you and your partner, right? So you're going to have, his looks, my whatever, his musical talent, my dark skin, his tallness, whatever, right? But no kids actually have that. No kids actually grab all the very best bits from both of you. So as far as a vision goes, I genuinely don't think I ever had a vision for my kids other than whatever a vision might be for any child. I would imagine that they would live a big full life, that they would go to school, they'd go to uni, they'd move out, they'd marry someone or not, they'd have kids and it'd all start again. So I think it's really that simple. I just imagined the life that my child would have. Then when they were born disabled, of course, that was thrown down the toilet, but then it was slowly brought back up again as I learnt and listened to others.
And you've just shared, learning and listening to others and getting around people with disability who are older. Clare, what about you? Is there anything that resonates with Sam there, or did you have a different approach?
Yeah, look, to be honest, much the same. I was a very young mum. I was having my first child at 21, which I look at my daughter who's 22 now and go, oh my God, please don't do that. But my vision much the same as Sam, except with the only addition was that they could one day grow up to keep me in the style that I could soon become accustomed to. So I have 3 children. They're 22, they're 20 and 8. Yep, fell for that again. The middle child is the one he has a disability, and we were a little bit late to the party when it came to the diagnosis. We lived in a regional area and it was quite challenging to find someone who would listen, and so we knew from a very young age that our Luke needed additional support, and he did have a disability, but getting someone else to understand that was a little bit challenging, and at the age of 7 he was diagnosed with ADHD and an sensory processing. But then when we investigated a little bit further and finally found the right people to talk to us, he was 13 and he was finally diagnosed with autism, and I was 42 when I was diagnosed with autism, so it's been quite an interesting journey. like Sam, once we kind of knew that something was different, all of those things that, you know, kind of went out the window. And when he was going through that diagnostic process, to be honest, my big fear was that we would be now talking to the justice people, you know, because he had some real significant behaviours of concern and things that weren't so great. But we went as a family unit and we said, no, that's not the map that is set in stone for us as a family and for him as a human being. And we started to look for people who shared that vision with us, and saw something in our beautiful man, a young man who, you know, the average person might not see if they didn't have a little bit of empathy or compassion and understanding. And we surrounded ourselves with those people. And when I'm talking about those people, it isn't necessarily therapists, it's everyone from everywhere. And we did start to say, well, yep, it might take us longer to get there, but he is going to drive. He has a license. He's had his first speeding fine. We're incredibly proud. He does all right for himself with the ladies. As much as that would be that grey streak there, he does all right for himself with the ladies. He actually owns a block of land, and you know, he's 20. Employment's a struggle, but you know, we didn't, you know, we just kind of went, okay, what's the add-ons we need there, but we still want to follow that trajectory. You know.
And I think, you
that
know,
was a very long-winded answer.
No, it's good. It's good because plans just don't stay static, do they? It's not like you set a plan for when your child is born and you just go, this is how it's going to be. There is twists and turns, and there is plot twists, and there is, you know. So I know for us, we've got a little 5-year-old and she has Down syndrome, and you know, and we, even in those 5 years, have done different things, and through Plumtree and Now and Next, and it's not static, it just changes, and then they change, and then they develop stuff, and then they tell me the things that they want to do and achieve, and on it goes. I mean, I'm getting dictated to by a 5-year-old, you know, and it's wonderful. So yeah, so let's move on. They were great answers. Don't be too worried about this long-winded. I have to move you on if I need to, though, Claire, because we have got only a short time, even though I would like to speak to you all day. Marlena, what an exception. If anybody's going to have a speeding fine out of all the panelists, it'll be Marlena in that chair. Have you seen her on the beach? Get looking at her Facebook page. So you're a freelance journalist. She's a business owner. She's the world's first base jumper. She's extreme in all areas. She wears Dr. Martens like you haven't seen, Adidas gear. She's got some clobber on today. She's brilliant. Yeah, I've seen and heard you talk about your mom and write about your mom. So tell us how your parents supported you to become a strong self-advocate that you are today.
Just 2 seconds, I'll turn this back on.
Thanks, Bert. Bert's Marlena's long-term support worker, and he's fabulous. And she teases him. If you ever see her Facebook page, she teases Bert like you wouldn't believe. So Marlena is speaking through a device with us today. So we'd love to hear from you, Marlena.
We all can achieve something when we are supported. The fact I have a disability means that when I am not supported, it is kind of obvious, and literally my world at times is halted or stopped, should the support not be sufficient. Not having a disability, you guys are also supported in maintaining the life in which you live. My mother especially did not cotton ball me and fought for this support to be there throughout my life. She was my voice when I was a kid, but instilled in me the strength to have my own voice now. The self-advocacy started probably when I was a teenager, and my family allowed me to do this. It wasn't always rosy either. Mum at times was a huge bitch. Now I say that with the utmost respect. When my friends were getting a job while I had to get a job, I think she forgot I had cerebral palsy, but she wouldn't give me more pocket money. I had to get that myself, and when I found a job, she expected me to pay $50 a week board when I had a good week. Mum always has been my biggest advocate and always will be, but she allowed me to fail sometimes or fall down. Sometimes literally I would fall. She allowed me time to cry, but never could I feel sorry for myself and live in that moment. I had to dust myself off and get on with it. Teenage years were typical family dynamics despite my disability. I am blessed those this assisted me to move out of home, get my journalism and business degree, start a career, travel and more. The best tool my family gave me was to be a good networker and live in the real world. Not a special world. My mum would often say, "You're not special, Marlena, you get no sympathy from me." Get on with it. Teaching self-advocacy training starts when you were a kid. I would imagine it would be hard for a parent to let go and let kids fail, or worse, still be blatantly discriminated against or faced with issues other kids may not. If it wasn't my mum standing up for me early on, I wouldn't be where I am today. I have my battles now, and I know my family are still in my corner should I need them. 2. When using NDIS funding.
Marlena, thank you for that. There's a great piece about Marlena's mum. She wrote it for Reframing Disability. I'll put a link into the chat and put a few links into the chats later. But she just speaks really highly of how her mum had hopes and dreams for her, and had really high expectations of her daughter. And from my perspective, Marlena, you have nailed so many of those areas of your life. Well done. Thank you for speaking. Maryam.
Marlena too. And I reckon Sam would agree as well. I think we've all had those same kind of expectations for our kids. You know, I haven't had any other expectations for Luke than I have for my daughter Rhiannon, who doesn't have a disability. It's just the scaffolding that's gone around it. So, and I think that's why we're seeing the success. Look, I'm not going to paint, it's not utopia, it's been hard work, but that's why that's why he's down south for the weekend at a motorcycle event with mates, having a very big drinking binge and a great time, because why wouldn't he? He's 20, that's what they do. So we've always had the same expectation.
Another speeding ticket on its way.
Oh, no, he wasn't allowed to drive.
Yeah, brilliant. Does anybody else want to add, or shall we move on? I think both of you have captured that wonderfully, and let's move on. Maryam, a great professional and parent partnership is also important for achieving good outcomes. Do you have any tips for parents about working with professionals? And can you also share with us some of your experiences of collaboration that have led to great results?
Sure. Look, so much has been already covered in the conference about the importance of having parents as the key factors of change. And Claire, you just said that you have the same expectation for your kids, but one of your kids needed more scaffolding. So what is really the role of the professional? The role of the professional is, in my view, is to be part of this journey of change, but to really support parents to be empowered in making the change in area where a bit more of that scaffolding is needed. So I work in behavior, for example, and if I'm joining a family to deal with severe challenges in the area of behavior, I see my role as empowering the parents to understand how does behavior work, what are the fundamentals, laws of behaviors, what does empower, what does reinforce the problem behavior, what is the function of the behavior. And when I work with a family, I really want to leave my involvement with the family in a way that leaves the parent as the key factors in change. So they understand behavior. They're the ones that are going to be continuing whatever strategies we've come up together and whatever goals we have together, so that this change can be prolonged for the long term, not just for the short period of time that I'm in there. So I think if people ask me what is very important in working, sorry, did anybody have a question? No. I think it's important to have an open, understand that when working with a professional, that you want to be part of that change. Ask questions, have an open communication. If you don't like something, or you feel like something is not really based on your values or how you like to do things, be open about that. communicate that, look, this is a great strategy, but it just doesn't fit with my family, it doesn't fit with how we do things. Can we find a different way of doing something? This is not my child's dream. This is not how my child likes to do things. Can we look at it in a different way? It's very important to have that open communication. It's important to also take ownership. Like when I'm working with families, the families that end up having the best successes are the families that put the time and the commitment to be the change. So the more involvement you're putting into the plan, the more consistency you have in using the strategies or whatever you discuss with your therapists, the better results you're getting in terms, at least especially in the area of behavior. So my suggestion is one, to have clear communication and expectations with your therapist. Be an active participant in whatever the therapy is. Make sure that the therapy fits your values and the values of your family, and that you can actually continue it. Don't think that you're going to do something and you're like, I can do it for a week, but in the long run, this just doesn't work, because you're going to end up doing it for 10 days. And then after a while, you stop using it because it just doesn't work for your family. So just make sure that whatever is created works for you, and try and be consistent, but also forgiving of yourself, because progress is not linear going up this way. It's going to be going up and coming down. And some days you're going to be able to do the best and be actively there and do the therapy and make a lot of change. And some days you just can't do it. And I'm a parent as well. And I can say some days I can really be there and put 100% of me and on everything that I know about behavior. And some days I just need a break, and I just don't want to be that active a participant. I just need to step back a bit and reframe. So in terms of successes, I guess the best successes are the stories that I can say are stories where the parent has left empowered to make the changes in behavior and to understand behavior and to generalize these strategies across routines that really work for that person's life. And I think that's my key thing. Make sure that you don't see therapy as just that 1 hour, 2 hour thing that you take on with the therapist coming in. Try and see therapy as a tool that you use to make your life better with your son and your daughter, to make it work for you across all environments. And be mindful that children grow. What worked one time might not work in 2-3 years. You need to adapt. You need to be open to the fact that this is something that changes, that's something that progresses as you get older, as your child gets older, as the environment changes, and just be open to that. See it as an open experience.
The other thing, if I could just add to what Maryam said, which has been so really cool and valuable, the thing about the therapies and being sustaining, one of the great questions that I've asked therapists in the past is, does this have to look like therapy? And I'll use an example that we're doing at the moment. So my son needs some OT support. And one of the things that works really well for him is when he does that kind of heavy work, it helps him calm. And so for therapy, he goes to wrestling. And he works with a Commonwealth Games wrestling champ in a super inclusive gym. He gets the same outcome, but it doesn't look like therapy, because you can imagine at 20 years old, the arguments that we're having when the kid's got his own driver's license about going to therapy. So, you know, is there, and in the past we did things like soccer. So, well, what was the outcome? And was there something that we could do within a non-therapy setting that would give us the same outcome that he was engaged in, that he was passionate about, and it was also an opportunity for inclusion? So that's just my 2 cents, but it's worked really well for us.
And I think that's a really important, both of you have said, you know, just we have to be less rigid, I believe, in some of our goals and what we think speech is, or what we think OT is, or what we think therapy is. You know, we before COVID would meet sometimes our speechy at a cafe, because that's sort of, we like going out and we like being part of the community. And, you know, so we'd sit and eat, you know, just have some toast and a cuppa, and my daughter would just be involved in that whole process. And just that kind of stuff. So thinking out of the box, and, you know, yeah, let's move on, unless anybody else has got anything to add there. Marlena, we'll jump to you about the second question that we proposed, which was when using NDIS funding, and it follows on from this last conversation as well. Many parents may feel unfamiliar with the process of choosing plan managed funding at the start. What are some of the additional resources that self-managed funding can enable for building a great future for children?
NDIS is a great tool to enhance your child's life. I strongly encourage people to look at self-managing. Starting with being plan management might be easier to start with, but I believe self-management gives you more flexibility to drive what support can look like. Going down the self-manage pathway has allowed me to have choice and control over my supports. On the weekends, I run a jumping castle business. My supports come to get me up every Sunday morning. I'm using my NDIS to build an independent life that I can go out and contribute to my community. How I have managed to do this is find and network all workers and then use each individual's skills to enhance my life. I have tapped into the Brazilian community here and it has been awesome. In my journalism work, I have tapped into a few music journalists and photographers who recently lost their employment during COVID. These people align with my values and are advancing my life and goals. I am blessed. 3. When I receive a diagnosis.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marlena. What about anybody else want to jump in there?
I think I'll leave it to Sam. I've talked.
Sam, why don't you come in on that one?
My problem is that I could speak for 5 hours about this. So narrowing me down is going to be very difficult, Deb. You are going to have to channel and all right. So I'll give you some.
I've got my cursor of your mute button.
Yeah, excellent. Great. Perfect. That's exactly what you need to do. A few things that are really important is that self-management is not something you need to do alone. So you can get lots of support to do that. We have the Self-Manager Hub, which is a website and a Facebook group, great peer support in there and learning how to do these things. You can also use some of when you're self-managed, you can actually use some of your funds to pay someone else to help you self-manage. And there's a whole lot of peers in this room, and there's a whole lot of people at Reframing Disability that are self-managing, and I am sure would jump at the chance to do that work. Marlena may well be able to help reach out and support other people to self-manage. And who better to spend your self-managed funds on than other people with disability to support you to learn how to self-manage your funds. Now, a lot of people are scared about self-managing. What we say to lots of families is, look, do your plan management, but ask for 20% of your plan to be self-managed. And what they'll do is they'll put a portion of your plan all the way across in each category if you want as self-managed. So you don't have to manage all the bills for everything. You can send most of it off to the plan manager. But then when there's something that's a bit different or interesting and your plan manager's being a bit of a pain in the bum, claim it out of your self-managed. And that's a great way to start teaching you how to self-manage your funding. And then as you get more confident and you learn more, you can then switch over and get, do the whole thing self-managed if you want, or not. You might decide that you really always want a portion of your plan to be plan managed so that you don't have to deal with a certain number of invoices. That's your choice. That's the beauty of the NDIS. That's, there's a lot of things that are not good about the NDIS, but this is one thing that is really actually pretty awesome. You might also have heard some rumors that self-management was not, it was not going to continue to be supported and encouraged. No, not true. I'm on the self-management reference group for the NDIS and on the Independent Advisory Council, and all the messaging that we hear is about their support for people to self-manage. So we really do want that to happen more and more. It saves money for the agency. It gives greater value for participants, bigger choice and control, more options, lots of things that you can do. Is that enough, Deb?
Look, I reckon you did quite well there, Sam. I was expecting to be like doing these ones. I think you did great. No, and I saw in the chat that Sam's work is being highlighted, and there's some links. So please, after this, whether you're on watching now or later, jump onto some of these websites that the team are sharing, because they really will be an amazing support to you. Claire, let's hear from you on this.
Oh yeah, so like we started out plan managed, and then we're fully self-managed now, and the freedom that it's given us has just been phenomenal. And also, you know, it's given us opportunities that we wouldn't necessarily have had if we were, you know, NDIA managed or even plan managed, because sometimes you have to worry about your plan manager having the right flexible mind frame as well. So definitely I would suggest that, you know, I guess my only is reach out to some of the established peer groups. The only thing I do want to warn, and just having done some work on Facebook this morning, is just be a little careful about some of the social media, because you'll get someone who'll say, no, you can't do that. And I've seen Sam jump in, and I've jumped in before going, well, actually, you really can. So, you know, that's probably a tip from me, is just be a little bit mindful of what you read, because people are afraid of the flexibility of management as well, and you know, because it's government money, and you know, it's funding, and it's formal, and you know, it's really a little bit scary to take that leap of faith and self-manage it. But
accountability doesn't mean that you can't be flexible, right?
Absolutely not. But yes. I think people struggle to understand that a little bit. And you know, if you can bring it back to the reasonable and necessary, and I think, Sam, the growing space, you've got that checklist, but is it related to the disability? Is it value for money? Is it related to the goals? You can make all manner of things fit into that box and do some really wonderful and creative things. It also gives you the flexibility to look outside of your local area and work with people through telehealth and do a whole heap of different, you know, different courses and things like that, you know, if you're just sort of stuck in that agency managed or even sometimes plan managed, you might not get that opportunity. You know, some fantastic things have been achieved through those sorts of things like what Marlena has talked about. You know, the best support worker we ever had was a professional skateboarding teacher who took my son down to the skate park and you know, helped him integrate and learn how to do some of those things. Now that person would never have interacted with an agency, but you know, if
I was going to give one example around how self-managing is superior to plan management for at least part of your plan, preferably all, but at least part. When Ben goes away for short-term accommodation, when he has a break from us, he goes away, we just book an Airbnb or a hotel or a caravan park or whatever. We don't, he never goes, he's never been to a respite facility as such. One time when he did this not too long ago, he went to stay with a friend and a worker, and one of his other friends lived nearby. And I said to Ben, look, why don't you give Will a call and see if he wants to come and join you? You know, maybe you can hang out, watch a movie or whatever. Fine. I didn't hear another word about it. 3 months later, I'm down at the supermarket or whatever, and I bump into William's mum, and she says, that was so good that Will was able to stay overnight. And I said, what? So it turned out Will had gone over, he'd eaten pizza and drunk too many beers. They played beer pong, right? And he had crashed the night on the sofa. Now, you can bet your bottom dollar there is not a respite facility on this planet that would have allowed William there, would have allowed him to have a few beers, or would have allowed him to stay overnight.
Yeah.
So, and is that not what 20-year-olds do? You go to your mate's house, you have a few beers, you crash the night. And that's what happened. And if we were plan managed, there are only a few plan managers that will allow the invoices for those sorts of things to go through. So you do need to be careful about choosing the right plan manager to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar story for us.
As well.
So Marlena's just going to jump in here 1 second.
Marlena was just going to say that she's done that in the past, the flexibility and the things to drop at a drop of a hat. Being self-managed has allowed her opportunities, career advancements, things like Boy George flew to Sydney for the weekend at the drop of a hat. We didn't need permission from the plan or to fall within their guidelines. She organised a trip to Bali with her friends for 6 days, within 6 days. And being self-managed, she had the supports to do that. Whereas if it was plan managed, that work health safety may or may not have been a factor, which would have stopped it. Her natural supports coming in. So Bali, she went with 6 people. Her friend gave her the house. They organised flights. and then they got up to whatever they got up to in Bali. So just having that flexibility.
Gosh, can you imagine me, Marlena's support worker, getting a call? You wouldn't know what's going to happen next, would you? Am I jumping out of a plane today? Or, you know, am I jumping off a building? I'll
send you my resume. It sounds like an awesome gig.
That's right.
When we're in Bali,
Who on the panel wants to be Marlena's?
Can I just bust one myth on self-management too? A lot of people keep asking in the self-management groups, they always ask, well, what line, you know, what's the line item number, etc. The price guide does not apply in any way, shape or form to self-managers. You don't use line items. You don't have to stick with things that are only listed in the price guide. That does not apply to self-managers. When you claim around the support category. So it's either core or it's capacity building. So you really don't need to have all that stress about, oh, where does it fit? And even if you make a mistake, it's what's called misuse. You don't go to jail. You don't get in trouble. It's not a big deal if you claim from the wrong bucket.
That's a really good point. And
it for me, it's been fantastic too, because we found a really great therapist who wasn't registered and looked at the paperwork and said, I don't think so. And he was a little bit more than the price guide, but he got more and less sessions out of our son than someone we didn't know. So I could pay more, still claim it all from the funding, but the outcomes was actually greater than paying someone that wasn't familiar with us, that set line item.
Absolutely right. As Ben's moving out next year, we will pick one of his support workers to be more of a key worker, and we will pay them more than the set price guide, because they will be doing the mum jobs, you know, making sure the dentist appointment is made and all of those sorts of things. Yeah, I'm very looking forward to handballing all of those jobs.
Me too, mate.
And I want to pay someone. Yeah, and I want to pay someone a higher level to do that. Keep them in the job.
There's some great comments in the chat, and also some links to Sam's. We filmed something in 2018 of Sam talking about self-management. And again, all of our panel have different things in different places. Google their name, it will come up, and it'll just give you a broader view on NDIS and what you can do. I know that for even us, for a 5-year-old, there's things that we do that we've just pushed out from typical. We still have our speech EUs, wonderful. We still have our OT, that's wonderful. But there's other things that we just push out on, and and it's really, we really have a huge success. And sometimes those successes, you would all know, in a shorter time, if you're being creative with this stuff, in the family are enjoying it, and the child is, you know. Like, we don't ever say to our kid that, we've got therapy today, it's going to be all right. We don't need to do that. She's just like, let's do it, because we do creative things and we do fun things. And she normally knows with, you know, speech OT, there's going to be some food involved somewhere along the line, whether it's baking a cake, you know, and brilliant. Anybody else on anything? Or shall we move on?
I'm just checking the in the chat.
Oh, sorry, here we go. Marlena, was that you?
No, sorry.
Okay, no worries. When a family receive a diagnosis for their child, parents understandably sometimes feel they need to do lots of therapy, but parents can do a lot too. What are some of the examples from the panel? Maryam, maybe we'll jump to you. What's some of the things that you've seen in your professional experience that families can do?
Oh, I think the biggest changes happen when there is no therapy about what families do. Like Claire brought it up, when I'm trying to include even, you know, as a therapist, I might need to teach parents a different way sometimes to teach what you would typically teach, that scaffolding about that teaching and learning. But what really happens is throughout the days, throughout when the child wakes up to when they go to bed. So it's that exposure to multiple chances of interacting with your child and playing and having fun, and that relationships, the connections, those are so important for the child development, that it's not something that you get out of therapy. You get out of just being with your child and spending time together. So I think that's fundamental. And parents need to know. I had a parent asking me, but, you know, he's not learning. And I'm like, every time that you're prompting him to look at you and smile, something's going on here. You might not see it, but he's learning. There is learning happening as he's looking at you and he's smiling and he is touching you and he's giggling when you're tickling him. And maybe, yes, he's not sitting down and counting and pointing at the alphabet, but he is learning. It's happening. It's just, we need to change the way we view things. So absolutely, I think there is so much going on apart from therapy that we might not really see right there, but it's so fundamental.
And I don't know about you, but we don't have a therapist living with us. we have a therapist, right? We have our therapy, once, twice, 3 times a week, whatever that looks like. And then we're doing things. I know my daughter, who's 5, we were teaching her to, through therapy and then onto just everyday life, teaching her to expand her language. So we got to the point where she would go to the park and say to somebody, I'm Elston, what's your name? And then from that, we went on to how old she was. So she met this lady the other day and she said to this lady, so she would go, hi, I'm Elston, I'm 5. And that was it. But she's trying to engage in the community. Anyway, so this lady came over and Elston goes, oh, I'm Elston, I'm 5. And this lady went, oh, I'm Lynn, I'm 46. And that's what it's about, like getting your children beyond just this therapy session to do other things and get involved in the community and meet people and, whether it's communicate, have fun, engage,
Yeah, I was very fortunate very early when Luke was quite young, because I also have been working in the sector for a very long time before we knew, but I was very fortunate, and somebody used the phrase with me that every moment has potential. And that actually really, I know it's probably a little bit cliche and a lot of people might have heard it, but that's been so impactful for me. So it got me thinking about the everyday as a therapy tool. So getting up in the morning, getting dressed, so from the minute it doesn't just start when we get to the therapist's office. What can we scaffold into the day from the minute we wake up? And it sounds like a lot of work, but it honestly, and Sam, you probably would agree, having a child who's older, it kind of just becomes habit. It doesn't feel like work. If we start and we build it into the everyday in small increments and move through it, it does become habit. And then you start to look at those opportunities in other ways as well. For example, Luke was really struggling around, fitting in teams and things like that. So we kind of went and thought about what everyday moment or what everyday activity could we build some of those opportunities. And we joined the local soccer club because he didn't cope with the hustle and bustle and the physicality of AFL. AFL was pretty big in our town, but so was soccer. So we joined the local soccer club and he put himself in goals, because he was still part of the team, but he got those breaks in between when the ball was up the other end and he can stop and reset. But it didn't look like therapy, but it was incidental practicing and it was incidental stuff, and then the coach kind of got on board and started to talk to him and do some work with him before and after practice and things like that. But every opportunity that we could find, that every moment had that potential.
And Claire, that's so important when I said, when you're working with your therapist, to make sure that if something doesn't work for your day, if you can't incorporate it in your daily activities, in your daily routines, that doesn't work for you. The real therapy has to be designed in a way that can be generalized and incorporated in your routine. So make sure that when you're working with a therapist for whatever it is, OT skills, behavior, speech, it's something that you can sustain because can become part of your life. It's to see it throughout your routines, not just for that 1 hour where you're sitting down and doing that type of intense therapy.
I think it's really important to look at therapists as consultants. They're your consultants. They're under your direction. You find you get the information that you need from them to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. They don't design a program without you being there to say what is working and what does work and what doesn't.
Absolutely.
And I think for us, we haven't got therapists that are offended if something doesn't work, right? And I think, if something doesn't work, we've got, this isn't working, we need to rethink. We've got great therapists that are straight onto that and go, let's try this. And I think that's really important, that we have this. Yeah, go Sam.
they've all got so much work too. It's not like you're cheating them. It's not like they're worried about, you know, feeding their families. They're quite happy to do less work for you and do more work, you know, and spread themselves thinner and do some work for other people as well. They should be treated as consultants most of the time. There are going to be some exceptions for that, particularly talking about.
And my second point on communication is.
Oh, I think Marianne's frozen.
The other point about being consultants, they work for you.
Is the guru or whatever, and I'm not communicating that this is not working. The therapist won't know that it's not working for you. You need to communicate that. You need to be open.
Yeah. Claire, jump in there, and then we'll go to you, Marlena. I know you've got something else.
I just wanted to say that you know, it's really important to remember that the therapists, the staff, everybody, you're in control here, and these guys actually work for you. And sometimes I think when we live in therapy and service land, that power balance shifts a little bit. But if you think about, you know, if I reflect on all of the people that have been in Luke's life to date, we're well into the double digits. You know, when you talk about school, teachers, doctors, specialists, therapists, therapy assistants, support workers, exactly. We as a family unit are in control here. They are our employees, and it's really important that we as families take a little bit of that leadership back and say, we're in control here. This doesn't work for us. Wonderful idea. Sure, it will work for somebody. It doesn't fit us. It's exhausting. It's causing damage to our relationship, etc., etc. No, thank you.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's a really good point. I know Nicole, who's in the chat, she just said she remembers stressing about not getting enough hours in, but then she realized that she was doing therapy hours every day. You know, so many, I know, especially with new diagnosis or, you know, new to therapy, just stress about, oh my gosh, I haven't done something. But it's every day. It's just part of what we do. Marlene, I'm gonna get you to jump in.
My mother and I did a lot of physical therapy back in the day. I would say to parents, look after yourself as well. Therapy is a double-edged sword in a way. Therapy was vital and was needed, but looking back, I understand now why my mum drank a lot. I have always joked if mum ever needs a new liver, she can have one of mine, as I feel partially responsible for her drinking when I was a kid. My preschooling years were just therapy, sleep, cry, eat, cry, etc. It consumed not only my life but many people's around me. Mum was just doing the best by me and listening to everyone's advice. She obviously wanted the best for me and would drive to Brisbane from the Gold Coast at least 3 times a week. Sometimes this advice wasn't helpful and caused anxiety and stress. Sometimes this advice was conflicting with other professional advice. Remember, as parents, it is you that is the #1 professional in your child's life. You know what you want for your child and the expectations you may have. It is okay for you to disagree with the professionals, and there will be many times in life you will have to do this. This is a hard concept to come up with, but is vital. It isn't personal, although some professionals may take it as such. I thank God Mum always had an open ear, but no one was swaying her from her belief in me that I was to play a part in whatever community I chose. Due to all the therapy, it was advised to my mum that I would go to special school. It was clear in the 90s that that was what I needed to have a normal life. My #1 advice to anyone that requires therapy is, while it is important, sometimes the best therapy for a kid is just simply being around other able-bodied peers their own age. My mum would rarely allow me to take time off school for therapy and would always maintain my best therapy was being around other kids. Maybe this was for her own selfish reasons, as well as she had many drinking partners, which obviously was her therapy sessions. God, I love my mother. Although my mother and I did a lot of physical.
Thank you, Marlena. We've got about probably 5 to 10 minutes left, I think. So let's jump to my last question. So circumstances change as children get older. How do you decide to stay true to your vision or adapt it to suit changing circumstances or times? We have gone into this a little bit, but anybody got any specific advice on that?
Absolutely. It's no longer your call once your kid's an adult. That's the biggest one. It's not your vision anymore. It's their vision. And you need to support that by stepping away from it, by creating a circle of support, by learning about supported decision making and supporting young people with disabilities to make their own decisions in life. You know, my son makes many decisions that make me cringe, but it's not my job anymore. He's 21. You know, I'm there to catch him when he falls, and I'm not there to push him over, but I can't direct him anymore. It is his life. It is his life, and I should not be doing that now.
100% agree. And you know, it's also part of that letting go of your vision and it becoming their vision is understanding that things are not going to go to plan. Things are going to go wrong. You know, we've had a horrendous year with Luke in employment, and that's okay, because so did a lot of the other young 20-year-olds in life. But you know, don't be afraid to let failure happen, because they'll learn, just like I've learned, just like Sam's learned, Deb's learned, all of our panelists here, Marlena will have learned. It's what you can take from that and learn to do, you know, maybe prevent that from happening again, or it might happen again, because I don't know about you as an adult, I make mistakes and I sometimes make them more than once, but failure is okay. Failure will give you learning, and you can go on from there. And also, yeah, that it's okay to grieve and struggle to let go of the vision that you had as it becomes somebody else's. You know, can I just add? Drink.
Yeah. The NDIS doesn't fund gin. I know this.
Yeah.
This all starts really early.
I was just about to say, Sam.
This starts with choosing what clothes you wear. Right. Even though I can't stand that he chooses the clothes he chooses, I have to step away from my vision of how I want him to dress to how he wants to dress. Yeah. With all of these little decisions, we've got to learn to support our kids to make little decisions when they're younger so that they're more confident to make bigger decisions when they're older.
Yeah, Maryam, as in that professional space, how are we to encourage? Because I know a lot of our people who are tuned in today would have had Lilies because they've come through Plumtree or RD or even the Now and Next program. How are we getting that choice early so that down the track is there a need to do that? Is it important?
I think it's very important to give children communication, definitely give them a voice. So work on whatever device, technique or strategy you use to let the child communicate. With problem behavior, usually issues with problem behavior happen because there isn't a better way to communicate your needs. So you use challenges to do that. So that's from my area. But teaching children to make choices from an early age and encourage choice making and encourage that self-determination within boundaries of their age, but to give those tools to children that maybe they might not have those communication skills to have and to work with. I've worked with adults a lot as well, and I think that the hardest thing was to go into adults that came out of residential facilities and having to go back into teaching what choices mean. What does it mean to make a choice? What does it mean to have self-determination? Just going back to your rights. And that's something I don't want to say, and that's something that I think it's important to work on from an early age.
It's hugely important. One thing that I also want to encourage parents, just in the work that I do professionally, I spend a lot of time talking and working within employment settings. Start having conversations just like kids without disabilities about what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do for a living? Because the people that I work with mostly now are older, and no one's had that conversation with them before. Build it into the vision. It doesn't matter how long it takes to get there, and it doesn't matter what it chooses, they choose that to be, but at least have that conversation and include that in your broader vision. Because from my personal work experience, that's one of the things that we focus on therapy and we focus on living, and this is important too. And it's a great way of connecting people, and it's a great way of becoming connected and valued. Despite the work that we all do around inclusion, people, one of the first things they say, and what do you do for a living? you know. And so I really would encourage parents. I know that some of you are, you know, very, very, it feels like very far away, but it's probably not. But yeah, do include that conversation around employment in your vision. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really good. I know Sam just put into the chat there, it's worth Googling supported decision making, and she wished she'd done that earlier as a kid. So if you're listening in, do that. Marlena, have you got anything to finish us on?
Which is scary. We are always changing in our lives, and sometimes it can be confronting and uncomfortable. Excuse the language, but the good shit that has occurred in my life has come from when I have had to endure major change. When I look at traveling, an example, it has been getting out my comfort zone and stepping out, and the ledge had provided me with the greatest opportunities in my life. Early on, my family instilled in me that living a normal life was about being open to experiences in the real world. Standing on my own 2 feet and having my own voice is an interesting saying, considering I'm non-verbal and a wheelchair user, but it is true. I can't stress the need for normality as much as possible. An inclusive school was vital for me to adapt to change and altering circumstances. We cannot stop change, but having a solid group of people in my life throughout all these changes has ensured I remain sane. These people aren't paid people, but a solid group of people that have my back. For many with disability, this may be lacking, so change is scary. A change of circumstances might be what you or your child needs to further their life for the better. When I finished school, where I had a group of friends who were indirectly my natural supports. The year following school was a big shift for me socially because everyone went their separate ways. So I need to open myself to meeting new people in my business course at TAF. In a few short months, I had a few new friends that I could go out on a Saturday night. Some of them are still close friends now. If we are be open to change, it might bring something more valuable to our lives. I encourage you all, keep your eyes on the prize and remain true to your vision. Don't let anyone sway that vision. Anyone. People will think you are unrealistic. When this happens, this is good. Keep going. You may lose friends or people who you thought were supporters. Good, you are on track. Surround yourself with people that not only know your vision, but support and encourage it. Share that vision with many, many people. Share this from when your child is of a young age. It is vital to have supporters, or as my mother had, drinking buddies, when the going gets rough. It will get rough at times, but there is something about a family's strength to get through this. Hate to appear sexist, but mothers have got something stronger than anything else out there. Embrace change, surround yourself with supporters, and keep your eye on your vision. Visions are vital. Be open to modify the vision, but only if it betters the vision. You got this.
You have got this. Marlena, thank you. And thank you to our panelists. We are going to head back to the main session and Mello will take us on, but we are so grateful for that advice. I'm going to propose that somebody is going to write a blog about this and we'll put links and stuff so that you can send it further afield, look at it yourself, because that was a lot of information. But thank you, panel. We are so grateful.